The overhead compartments clicked shut one by one as passengers settled into their seats on Flight 447 to Seattle. Marcus Chen gripped his crying daughter tighter, feeling the familiar burn of embarrassment creep up his neck as every head in the cabin seemed to turn toward them. Little Emma, barely 6 months old, had been inconsolable since they left the gate, her tiny face red and scrunched with distress. "I'm so sorry," Marcus whispered to no one in particular, bouncing Emma gently as he navigated down the narrow aisle toward his seat. His worn denim jacket and oil-stained work boots marked him clearly as someone who worked with his hands, someone who had probably saved for months to afford even these economy tickets. The diaper bag hanging from his shoulder was patched in several places, and his eyes carried the exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He found his row and noticed that the window seat was already occupied by a woman who seemed entirely out of place in economy class. She wore an elegant charcoal blazer over a silk blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a sophisticated twist. Her fingers, adorned with what appeared to be a genuine diamond ring, rested on an expensive leather notebook. But it was her eyes that caught Marcus's attention. They were red-rimmed and distant, staring out the small airplane window at nothing in particular. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly, trying to maneuver past her to the middle seat while Emma continued to wail. The woman looked up, and for a moment, something flickered across her face. Not annoyance, as Marcus had expected, but something deeper, a flash of raw pain that disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. "Of course," she said quietly, standing to let him pass. Her voice was cultured, controlled, but Marcus detected a tremor beneath it. As Marcus settled into his seat with Emma, he became acutely aware of how his daughter's cries seemed to fill the entire cabin. He tried everything, the pacifier, the bottle, gentle rocking, soft humming, but nothing worked. Emma was overtired, overwhelmed by the noise and unfamiliar surroundings, and she let everyone within 100 feet know about it. "I'm really sorry," Marcus said again, glancing at the woman beside him. "She's usually not like this. We've just had a really long day, and I think everything is just too much for her right now." The woman turned to look at him, and Marcus saw her face properly for the first time. She was probably in her early 30s, with refined features that spoke of privilege and comfort. But those eyes, they held such profound sadness that Marcus felt his own troubles diminish slightly in comparison. "Please, don't apologize," she said, and this time her voice cracked slightly. "Babies cry. It's what they do." She paused, then added almost to herself, "It means they're alive and healthy in here." There was something in the way she said it that made Marcus look at her more closely. The woman's hands, he noticed, were trembling slightly as she clutched her notebook. She wore no wedding ring despite the expensive jewelry on her other hand. Her designer handbag was monogrammed with initials he didn't recognize, but everything about her screamed wealth and sophistication. The plane began to taxi, and Emma's cries reached a new crescendo. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead. He was a mechanic, good with his hands, able to diagnose any problem with an engine, but he was still learning how to be a father on his own. 6 months ago, his world had been completely different. "Here," the woman said suddenly, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small, soft scarf in pale blue. Sometimes different textures can be soothing. She stopped abruptly, swallowed hard, then continued. "I read that somewhere." Marcus accepted the scarf gratefully and gently draped it over Emma's tiny hands. The baby's fingers instinctively grasped the silky material, and miraculously, her cries began to subside into whimpers. "Thank you," Marcus breathed in relief. "That's amazing. You must have kids of your own." The woman's face went completely white. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then, to Marcus's horror, tears began streaming down her cheeks. She turned quickly toward the window, but her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Marcus sat frozen, Emma now quiet in his arms, completely unsure what to do. He had clearly said something terribly wrong, but he had no idea what. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to, whatever I said." The woman raised a hand, shaking her head. She took several deep breaths, clearly trying to compose herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the engine noise as the plane picked up speed for takeoff. "No, I'm sorry. That was inappropriate of me. You couldn't have known." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue from her bag, careful not to smudge what remained of her makeup. I don't have children. I was supposed to, but... Her voice broke again. I lost my daughter 3 weeks ago. She was born too early. She only lived for 2 hours. Marcus felt as though someone had punched him in the stomach. He looked down at Emma, now peacefully drowsy in his arms, and couldn't imagine the pain this woman must be feeling. I'm so sorry, he said, and the inadequacy of the words hung in the air between them. I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through. The plane lifted off the ground, and for several minutes, neither of them spoke. The woman stared out the window at the city shrinking beneath them, and Marcus held Emma close, suddenly grateful for every crying fit, every sleepless night, every challenging moment that meant his daughter was alive and with him. Finally, the woman spoke again, her voice steadier now. My name is Victoria. Victoria Hartwell. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. He might not move in elite circles, but even he knew that name. Hartwell Technologies was one of the largest tech companies in the country, and Victoria Hartwell was its founder and CEO, one of the youngest billionaires in America. Her face had been on magazine covers, her success story told and retold as an example of brilliance and determination. I'm Marcus, he said simply. And this is Emma. He decided not to acknowledge that he recognized her name. Right now, she wasn't a billionaire CEO. She was just a grieving mother sitting in economy class, as far from her usual world as she could get. Victoria managed a small smile as she looked at the baby. She's beautiful. How old? 6 months, Marcus said. Her mother, my wife, she died in childbirth. There were complications. The doctors tried everything, but he stopped, his own voice thick with emotion. So I guess we're both dealing with loss. Victoria turned to look at him fully now, and understanding passed between them, the recognition of shared pain, different in its specifics but equally devastating. Here they were, 2 people from completely different worlds, sitting side by side on an airplane, both carrying grief that felt too heavy to bear. I'm supposed to be at a conference in Seattle, Victoria said quietly. Some big industry event where I'm the keynote speaker. My assistant booked me a first-class ticket on a different airline, but I couldn't be around people right now. So I bought a last-minute economy ticket on this flight using a different name. I just wanted to disappear for a while, you know? To be nobody. Marcus nodded. I get that. I'm heading to Seattle for a job opportunity. A friend of mine runs an auto shop there and offered me a position. Better pay, better schools for Emma when she's older. But honestly, I'm also running away. Everything back home reminds me of Sarah. The house we were going to fix up together, the nursery we painted, the life we had planned. Emma stirred in Marcus's arms, making small cooing sounds. Victoria watched her with an expression that was both tender and agonized. Would you? Victoria hesitated, then continued. Would you mind if I held her? Just for a moment? I promise I'll be careful. Marcus didn't hesitate. Of course. He carefully transferred Emma into Victoria's arms, and the transformation on the woman's face was remarkable. The hardness that came with being a powerful CEO melted away, replaced by pure, vulnerable emotion. She held Emma with the natural grace of someone who had imagined this moment countless times, cradling the baby close and breathing in that unique infant scent. Hello, sweet girl, Victoria whispered, her voice catching. You're so lucky to have a daddy who loves you so much. A tear dropped onto Emma's blanket, and Victoria quickly wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm getting her all wet. It's okay, Marcus said gently. Babies can handle tears. They shed enough of their own. Victoria laughed softly, a sound that seemed to surprise her. That's true. She looked at Marcus with newfound curiosity. You're doing this alone? Raising her by yourself? Marcus nodded. It's terrifying, to be honest. I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I watch YouTube videos on how to change diapers properly. Read articles at 2 in the morning about whether her cry means she's hungry or tired or sick. My apartment is a disaster. I survive on cold pizza and coffee, and half the time I put her clothes on backwards. But you're doing it, Victoria said. You're showing up every single day. That's what matters. Some days I don't feel like I'm doing it very well, Marcus admitted. Like today. I was so stressed about the flight that I forgot to pack enough formula, and then we got stuck in traffic on the way to the airport, and Emma could sense my anxiety so she started crying, and by the time we got through security I was a complete mess. Victoria was quiet for a moment, still holding Emma, who had fallen completely asleep in her arms. You know what I find remarkable? You're here. Despite your grief, despite your fear, despite not knowing what you're doing, you're here with your daughter, trying your best. That's more than a lot of people would do. What choice do I have? Marcus said. She's my daughter. She's all I have left of Sarah. And she's also just herself. This whole new person who deserves the best possible life I can give her. Victoria looked down at Emma's sleeping face. My daughter, we were going to name her Lily. She never even opened her eyes. I keep wondering what color they would have been. My husband, or ex-husband now I suppose, he couldn't handle it. He left 2 days after we buried her. Said he needed space to grieve, but what he really meant was that he couldn't stand to be around me and my grief. I'm so sorry, Marcus said. That makes an already impossible situation even worse. The thing is, Victoria continued, I've built this empire. I've negotiated deals worth billions of dollars. I've faced down corporate raiders and skeptical investors and industry titans who thought a woman couldn't possibly know how to run a tech company. But I couldn't keep my own daughter alive. All that power, all that money, all that success. None of it mattered. I couldn't save her. Marcus reached over and gently touched Victoria's arm. It wasn't your fault. Sometimes things happen that are beyond anyone's control, no matter how smart or powerful or wealthy they are. I've learned that the hard way. The doctors said there was nothing anyone could have done to save Sarah. Random chance, wrong combination of factors, just terrible luck. But it doesn't make it easier to accept. They sat in silence for a while, the gentle hum of the airplane engines providing a soothing background. Emma slept peacefully in Victoria's arms, completely unaware of the profound moment happening around her. Finally, Victoria spoke again. Can I tell you something that I haven't been able to tell anyone else? Of course. I don't want to go back to my old life. The company, the endless meetings, the pressure to always be perfect, always be strong, always have the answer. I've spent years building Hartwell Technologies, and right now, I can't imagine walking back into that building. All I want is what you have, a reason to get up in the morning that has nothing to do with quarterly earnings or market share. Marcus gave her a sad smile. And I keep thinking how much easier things would be if I had the kind of resources you have. The best childcare, no worries about whether I can afford formula and diapers, the ability to take time off when I need it. But I guess we all think the grass is greener somewhere else. Money doesn't buy the things that really matter, Victoria said. I've known that intellectually for a long time, but I'm really understanding it now. I would give away every penny I have if it meant I could hold my Lily just once, hear her cry, change her diaper, stay up all night worrying about her. All the things you get to do with Emma. Emma stirred and began to fuss, and Victoria reluctantly handed her back to Marcus. Thank you for letting me hold her. You have no idea what that meant to me. Marcus settled Emma against his shoulder. I think I do, actually. And thank you for the scarf trick. And for talking with me. This flight has been a lot less lonely than I expected. Victoria smiled. A real smile this time. You know, when I saw you boarding with a crying baby, my first instinct was to be annoyed. Isn't that terrible? I was so wrapped up in my own grief that I couldn't see anyone else's struggles. But talking to you, seeing how much you love your daughter despite everything you're going through, it's helped me more than you know. As the flight continued, Marcus and Victoria talked about everything. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their losses. Victoria shared stories about building her company from a dorm room startup to a tech giant, and Marcus talked about his love for fixing things, for taking broken machinery and making it work again. They discovered shared interests in old movies and terrible puns, and they laughed together, both surprised that laughter was still possible. What will you do? Marcus asked eventually. When we land. Victoria Said. I'm supposed to give that keynote speech tomorrow. Part of me thinks I should just skip it, stay in my hotel room, wallow in my grief. But talking to you has made me think that maybe showing up is what matters. Not being perfect, not having all the answers, but just showing up even when it's hard. That's what I keep telling myself, Marcus said. Every day that I get out of bed, feed Emma, change her diaper, take her for a walk, even when I'm exhausted and grieving and scared, I'm showing up. And someday, when she's old enough to ask about her mother, I want to be able to tell her that even though I was broken, I never stopped trying to be the father she deserved. As the plane began its descent into Seattle, Victoria pulled out a business card from her wallet and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal number," she said, handing it to Marcus. "I don't give it to many people, but I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe we can help each other through this, as friends. No billionaire SEO, no struggling mechanic. Just two people who understand loss and are trying to find their way forward." Marcus took the card, genuinely moved. "I'd like that. And hey, if you ever need someone to remind you that showing up is enough, or if you just want to hear what ridiculous parenting mistake I've made that day, call anytime." Victoria laughed. "Deal. And if you ever need anything, I mean anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I may not be able to save everyone, but I can certainly help a friend." The plane touched down smoothly, and as passengers began gathering their belongings, Marcus and Victoria remained seated for a moment longer. "Thank you," Victoria said softly. 3 weeks ago, I boarded a different plane to go to the hospital where my daughter was born too early. I've felt dead inside since then, like I was just going through the motions of being alive. But sitting next to you and Emma today, it's the first time I've felt anything other than pain. You reminded me that life keeps going, that there are still moments of connection and kindness and even hope. "You helped me too," Marcus replied, Emma now awake and looking around with curious eyes. "I've been so focused on my own struggle that I forgot other people are fighting battles I know nothing about. You've got this whole other life waiting for you in Seattle. Responsibilities, people depending on you, expectations to meet, and you're dealing with grief that would destroy most people. But you're still here. That takes incredible strength." They gathered their things and stood, joining the line of passengers shuffling toward the exit. Before they parted ways at the gate, Victoria leaned down and gently kissed Emma's forehead. "Take care of your daddy," she whispered to the baby. "He's one of the good ones." Then she looked at Marcus with eyes that, while still sad, held a glimmer of something else. Determination, perhaps, or renewed purpose. "I'm going to give that speech tomorrow. And I'm going to be honest about where I am right now, about what I've lost and how I'm struggling to move forward. Maybe it will help someone else who's going through something similar." "It will," Marcus assured her. "And Emma and I will be cheering you on, even if we're not in the room." As they walked in different directions through the airport, Victoria toward the executive car service that would take her to a luxury hotel, Marcus toward the shuttle that would bring him to his friend's modest apartment. Both carried something they hadn't had when they boarded the flight. A reminder that even in the deepest grief, human connection could create moments of light. Victoria stopped at the curb and looked back, watching as Marcus juggled his luggage and Emma's car seat, the baby content in his arms despite the chaos around them. She pulled out her phone and called her assistant. "Sarah," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I need you to arrange something for me. There's a man named Marcus Chen. He just arrived in Seattle. I want you to find out where he's working and arrange for an anonymous donation to help with childcare costs. And set up a trust fund for his daughter's education. But make sure he never knows it came from me. Can you do that?"